there's this huge interconnection between mental health and financial health. It can exacerbate depression, anxiety, even financially triggered PTSD. But when we promote our mental health, when we shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundant mindset, and we embrace our worth, and we practice assertiveness, and we have a positive collaborative mindset, that's going to really help us financially. It's going to help our businesses grow.
Welcome to the Communication Queens podcast for the visionary leaders, speakers, service providers, and podcasters who are looking to stand out sharing their story. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, former screenwriter turned master communications coach. On this podcast, I'll be coaching you on how to share your own transformation story so that you increase your visibility, influence, and income on podcast interviews. Let's get your voice heard.
Joyce, welcome to the Communication Queen podcast. I think the best place to start is at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. And I want to know, how do you typically share your story when you go onto a podcast?
Kim, thank you so much for having me. Well, I typically share my journey as a psychotherapist and entrepreneur and how I became interested in the psychology of money, because I noticed an interesting trend. As my clients started to make progress in therapy, they started to earn more money. And I was really curious about that because we were talking about their depression or anxiety or relationship issues. But client after client was coming in with raises and promotions and starting their own businesses. And I wondered why. And it turns out it's because in therapy, we're always working on our underlying self-worth and self-esteem. And as we feel better about ourselves, we put ourselves out in the world with more confidence, assertiveness, negotiation, and advocacy. And I really cared about that as an entrepreneur because I believe that therapists, we all specialize in our own issues, and I've had a lot of financial anxiety. I started my business with $500, $50,000 of student loans. I ended up in cash flow hell because the bigger we got, the more money was outstanding in insurance claims. And I thought I would have to file business bankruptcy. I had panic attacks and insomnia. And I decided to use tools from my psychological training to change my money mindset. And 7 years later, I was able to successfully sell my business for a 7-figure multiple.
Yes, queen!
Yes. So I feel like my purpose is to remove the shame and stigma from both mental health and financial stress and provide practical tools for people to heal, recover, thrive, and prosper. And I do that through my keynote speaking, corporate training, my books and courses, and articles.
What I love about your story is you are just this walking embodiment of practicing what you preach. And you've gone off, you've sold your company, you're now going around speaking at major corporations. And one of the things that I regularly tell my listeners, and I think this is a really interesting one for you because you're a therapist, and with therapy, there are more clinical regulations as far as what you can and cannot share about clients.
Yes.
And what I have found to really benefit with in the podcasting space in order to demonstrate, and then to not only, because your story shows and tells, and then I'm sure you have multiple client stories that show and tell the success story. How can you as a therapist navigate around basically the HIPAA regulations to keep your clients' confidentiality, but also share their success stories to demonstrate that social proof?
That's a great question because I know having that hero's journey is important when on a podcast or speaking. And so when I was writing my book, I had many case examples, really special clients who had just blossomed into their best selves personally, professionally, and financially. And I had the blessing of learning from them. So I asked for their permission to share their story. And I changed some of their identifying information, obviously their name, some small details about the story, and I explained that in the acknowledgments of my book. and received their consent. So they were happy to be a shining light for others. And I just made sure not to give any identifiers to really protect the sacredness of our relationship and work together.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable and necessary, even for those in the coaching space or consulting space who may not have as strict regulatory bodies around it. Just being able to protect your client's confidentiality or receive their permission for what it is that you are sharing is really crucial to their trust and also repeat business for you.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all interconnected. And if someone were to hear me speaking poorly about a client or using them as a negative example, that would be really hurtful. And so I always choose to share my clients' shining stories and their important learning lessons and their successes, and to do that in a way that's really honoring of them and, again, maintaining their privacy.
So what is an example of a client story that kind of mirrored your own journey?
Oh my goodness. I wrote in my book in the self-love, or actually it was the compassion chapter, about a really special client named Suma. And Suma is a Muslim woman, and she had grown up in a family where there was some domestic violence. And she, unfortunately, I believe we all unconsciously recreate what's familiar until we become aware and we choose something different. So she ended up in an emotionally abusive marriage and actually had self-harm behaviors when she was feeling upset in that marriage. And she was a trauma survivor, like many of us, and understandably, her self-esteem was impacted. And so through our work together, we helped her heal and really shift from really self-flagellation and self-loathing to self-love. And she just blossomed, and she ended up leaving her marriage, which in the Muslim culture is a really difficult and brave thing to do. And it took a lot of courage and a lot of strength, but she did it with her authenticity and compassion in her relationships. And she started her own business, went back to school. Today is a business owner with many employees, and she's happily married to the love of her life. So I just am so thrilled to have been part of her journey. And it's really about holistic success and wellness, not only financially, but emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally.
It all plays into everything. Like, just, we are not, as much as I've been having coached leaders for 9 years, like, I've seen people who are like, I want this to be my business box, and this is the problem that we deal with. I'm like, yeah, but that's also rippling in to your personal life and to your professional life. It's rippling into your relationships with your clients and your health. So
absolutely. Our personal self and our business self are two sides of the same coin. And whatever our business problem is, it's related to our own stuff. So my business wasn't profitable because I'm a recovering codependent. I'm a caretaker. I'm a giver. And my accountant had to do an intervention and say, Joyce, you're not running a charity to employ therapists. You need to make a profit. And I struggled with that guilt. But once I moved through that, when we have more, we can help more. So when my business was better, I could pay people better.
Yeah.
You have more student interns and provide more pro bono and sliding fee counseling. So it helps all of us when we blossom and grow and expand, including financially.
Yes. What have you found is the correlation between the financial side and, let's say, like a specific emotion? So like something like, is it more guilt that holds us back, or is it more shame, or is it anger? What is that deeper seated emotion that kind of is the heartbeat of financial poverty, like, basically?
Well, it's different for each of us. All of those that you mentioned are very real experiences for many. I think probably the overarching umbrella is money anxiety. And many of us come from cultures or families where there was financial trauma, and that gets really rooted into our epigenetics, our neural pathways, how we think about money, what we believe about money. Maybe we received messages about our gender or who we are, that we're going to make a lot of money or we're not. And all of those thoughts shape our money story. And when we've experienced financial trauma, like, first of all, racism, sexism, and marginalization are financial traumas. And poverty is a financial trauma. Or if you've gone through a business failure or a foreclosure or something like that, there can be a lot of shame and anger and frustration and hopelessness. And there's this huge interconnection between mental health and financial health. It can exacerbate depression, anxiety, even financially triggered PTSD. But when we promote our mental health, when we shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundant mindset, and we embrace our worth, and we practice assertiveness, and we have a positive collaborative mindset, that's going to really help us financially. It's going to help our businesses grow.
Amen. There's a perception that it's more competitive at the top. And I'm like, no, it's more collaborative. Like the higher I've climbed, the more collaboration, the more interconnectedness, the more support I've received, not just from like people who are not in the same industry, but like same industry doing the same thing as I do, cheering you on, saying, yes, her products are amazing, her services are amazing, you got to go buy her products. Like it's amazing to embrace that. And I think there's also an energy of being able to receive that.
100%. And I have coached a lot of private practice owners and given trainings on how to build and grow a practice to sell like I did. And I've had a lot of people say, why are you doing that? You're creating your own competition. And that's a scarcity mindset, the idea that there's only enough business to go around. And when I spoke and trained people, they referred to me and my business grew. So yeah, when we are collaborative and we share and we lift others up, even our competitors, it can really help us. That good karma comes back.
It like tenfold. And that's like one of the foundations that I've seen specifically to circle back to podcasting that really is amplified in the podcasting relationship, because so many people go on to a podcast and they kind of make it just about themselves. And it's like, oh, here's my big, I'm the star. Here I am showing up. And then they peace out, bye, never talk to you, like never talk to the podcaster who you had like a nice long conversation with. Yeah. And I think that's when generosity, that's why generosity is one of the core values of our agency, is like, it's but not for the sake of people pleasing, like or codependency. There's a boundary with generosity, but like generosity of being able to support and lift up and elevate. And so as a recovering codependent, like where is your boundary line when it comes to generosity, and where does it tip into codependency, complacency, people pleasing?
That's something that I'm always having to be mindful of. And so whether it's in my own therapy or my own coaching or having accountability partners, we are all works in progress. And it's something I still deal with because I'm so mission driven and I want to be of service. And so oftentimes I do fall into that giving. I spoke for a Rotary Club this morning, for example, complimentary, but yeah. They give to polio and they donated in my name, and that's contributing to the greater good. So I just check in with my internal battery, and if I start to feel depleted, I know that my boundaries are off. And I need, we're like cell phones. So imagine if you're a cell phone, what's your battery charge at? And if it's low, it's up to each of us to recharge that with self-care and appropriate boundaries. And then when our battery is charged, we have extra to give and share. And so we need to each be mindful of taking good care of ourselves and accessing support so that we can give to others and not feel resentful.
What are some of the boundaries that you've had to put up?
I have a lot of people reach out to me and say, I'd love to pick your brain. And I almost have PTSD from that phrase. I've had it so much, and I'll have people say, like, could we have a coffee or a meeting? And if I said yes to all of those, I'd have 30 hours a week of work. It's not feasibly possible for me to say yes to all of those. So I've had to learn how to gently say that I've decided that for people who are friends or I have a connection with, I offer a complimentary 30-minute consultation, but otherwise I send them my coaching information and encourage them to schedule a first call. And most of the time people do that. Every once in a while, I have somebody respond negatively to that. And
Yeah.
it's hard, but I just have to take care of myself. Otherwise, I would never have time for my own dreams.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece, especially with service-based industries, coaching, therapy, like all counseling. There is that pick your brain, seeking support, but not yet that moment of making that investment and like choosing to invest in that next opportunity. And I've actually found with some podcasts, not the ones we book our clients on, but podcasts in many ways have turned into like a glorified pick your brain session, depending upon what podcast it is on. That's why we have very high standards for like the podcasts we get our clients on, because I would never want what has happened to a few friends of mine to happen, where the podcast doesn't get distributed. It's just an hour-long conversation that's basically your Yes. Yeah. So you're getting like your brain pick, thinking you're doing a podcast interview, thinking there's karmic, reciprocity, but there's not. Wouldn't want that karma, but
Oh my goodness, that's not cool. That's very disappointing.
yeah. Yeah. And so it definitely, there's a boundary line of looking at making sure who you're conversing with, the friends. And I truly believe that the friends that truly respect you and the work that you're doing, they will pay for your services, your classes, your courses, because they have that respect for you. That's a foundation of mine for friendship that I had to draw that line with as well.
It's a good one. That's an important one to learn and establish. I love that. I loved your point about maintaining relationships with the podcast hosts. And admittedly, I don't think I've always done the best job with that. Do you have recommendations?
Yeah. I think it comes from that place of generosity and looking at like what are the common problems that a podcaster is facing. And so the typical main three are monetization, time that it takes to edit a podcast if they're doing all the editing themselves. And then the third one is finding great guests. And a very simple way is like, if you've been a great guest and there was a vibe and a rapport, then just refer someone to the podcast. Give them it's a simple email to connect them to another great guest who could be a great fit.
That's wonderful. And I do try to support people on social media. And in here you talk about generosity too. I've never done this, but I wondered what you think about as an author offering free copies of my book I've sent them to the podcaster, but what if I offered to raffle them on the podcast or something like that? Would you recommend that?
There could always be a great promo, especially that's a co-benefit to the growth of the podcaster or to you, and basically mutual benefit, where you do like a promo giveaway that's also promoting your episode and saying, oh, if you love the episode, we're doing this big giveaway on Instagram or something where tag me, tag the podcaster, you have to follow me, you have to follow the podcaster, and then, you give away the book to one of the audience members.
Super smart. That sounds great. And again, that collaboration, like making it a win-win. And I really believe that in business. The business has to be a win for the owner, the clients, and the people who work with you. So
yes,
when you establish that, you're going to succeed and sustain.
Now, I know you're speaking at corporations and really building up teams and their entire team psychology of money. And so how do you, having had and built and scaled and sold a business, how do you define supporting your team? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I speak a lot about conscious leadership, and it really involves a tremendous self-awareness. So working on ourselves through our own counseling, coaching, mindfulness work, and then having empathy and being a compassionate leader. So the ability to put yourself in your leadership's shoes or your employees' shoes and to see how things feel from their perspective and to really acknowledge and care about that, and then to be able to facilitate a shared vision and a shared mission where everyone feels meaning and purpose and that they're part of the greater good. And then having effective communication and conflict resolution is really important. So creating psychological safety in the workplace where people feel comfortable speaking up if they don't feel they're being seen and heard or valued, and that there can be positive change that comes from that.
I think that's so valuable with being able to look at how are you coaching and basically shifting the model from like coaching clients to coaching your team. And those are the people who are thus supporting your clients. And so it's constantly elevating your role and looking at all of the people that your leadership is impacting. Because I think some people, they don't realize how profound their impact actually is because they don't see themselves as a leader.
Yes. And you're exactly right. As a business grows, your responsibility is as an owner change. And when I got to the point where I had 100 employees, I couldn't handle the direct responsibility of that many people or the thousands of clients that we served. So I had a leadership team that they were the front-facing people in the different aspects of the business. And my entire role became supporting that leadership team. And it involved a lot of emotional intelligence to show them that I cared, I was behind them, I was supporting them, problem solving with them, and making decisions for the company overall and making sure I had their support. And I would have never succeeded without each and every one of them. They were each cornerstones of that business and really valuable. So those soft skills are critical in growing and succeeding in business.
Did they stay with the business as you left, as you exited?
They did. And then over time, they've each kind of dropped off. And I'm excited that many of them are doing their own thing,
Cool.
which is really cool. So it was kind of fun being a female business owner, and each of my leadership team were badass women, and now they're each kind of doing their own thing. And so that makes me super happy.
What is the difference between a leader and a manager?
A leader has vision, and I've heard it called WOO in Strengths Finders assessments. It's this ability to attract people behind a message or a purpose. And a manager is a little bit somebody just making sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, so that, just making sure that things are getting done and people are following policies and procedures. And a great manager also has those leadership skills, and we can all continue to work and practice those and develop them.
Yeah. What's harder, is a manager moving into a leadership position or a manager already establishing themselves as a leader and being able to hold the vision? Let's say, for example, you're in management and you're managing people, but you really would prefer you realize that you're better at holding the vision and encouragement. How do you up level into that role?
Well, I think just weaving in those leadership qualities. And I know I went through a lot of different leadership trainings because I served as board president for a number of different counseling associations, and they sent me to trainings to learn those skills. And then you just weave it into the work that you do and facilitating those kind of mentor relationships with the people that you work with, that you support, and then they will see you as a leader. So it's really doing our own inner work so that we can be a shining light for others.
Have you ever gone on a podcast and had that relationship turn into a mentor-mentee relationship?
I have. I have. I've met a number of just incredible women and men, but many women, business owners who have we've developed a friendship or taken on some other business ventures together. Maybe it was a talk together or collaborating on an article. One podcast I was on, the woman blogs for Forbes and I blog for Psychology Today. So we sort of cross promoted. So yeah, those relationships can be really beneficial.
It's not a surprise to me, but I love the fact that you have leveraged the power of those relationships, because that's the power of going on podcasts. Is it's like that, this intimate conversation that then can go in a multitude of different ways, just like any relationship. But if you're sitting down to have a 30-minute, 45-minute, hour-long conversation with someone, where can that conversation lead to for mutual growth and benefit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I believe in synchronicity, that there's a reason that we come into each other's lives. And so I always listen for that when I'm meeting podcast hosts. And I do try to think about how I can support them. And there's so many people, like one woman I remember, she and I met and we're like the same person. I'm like, we need to be friends. And so it's tough sometimes to keep in touch with everyone, but that's the intention.
Yeah. With there being so many people to keep in touch with, and like the whole social media, there's all the studies done on the psychology of social media and all of the anxiety or depression and comparisоnism that it brings up. This concept of staying, like, it's such a beautiful tool for staying in touch, but it also can create a lot of dysfunction and distraction.
Yeah.
So how do you, having built and sold a multi-million-dollar company, how do you like to best keep in touch with people who are in a space where you feel like there's a space to develop a true relationship?
I just sort of have in my mind the people who, like, for example, we're both members of the Dames.
Yeah.
And through the Dames, there were a couple people that I met that I was like, I would like you to be my friend. And then we just established some parameters of whether it's on Voxer, checking in once a week, or ways to check in, have a conversation every couple of weeks. And then there are people who it might be a podcast host where I'll have them in mind quarterly to kind of reach out and just refresh that relationship and talk about, how are you doing? How can I support you? This is something new I'm working on. And I usually try to make an offer, like quoting them in an article or something like that.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you circle back quarterly, because that's something that one of my mentors, Jesse Eitzer, said that to do is like have your list of 50 of like the 50 people that you just touch base with on a quarterly basis that are in those elevated roles that you're looking to expand into, and building into that relationship and being able to see how can you contribute to their success. Because no matter what level you're at, there will always be problems, because we're human. And sometimes we can have this illusion that just because someone's at a certain level of success, that they may not need our support or our contribution to whatever they're going through. And sometimes just a friendly word can go a long way.
Absolutely. And something that's worked for me as well is I am a big believer in having heroes. So I identify people that I really look up to and try to cultivate a relationship with them. And many of those people over time become my strategic partners, because they see that I am there to serve. An example, Spencer Sherman is an author with Sounds True, who published both of our books. And I love his work. He and I got to be on a course together through Sounds True. And so I invited him on my LinkedIn podcast. I made maybe 10 introductions for him to be a guest on podcasts I'd been on. And now he invited me to his retreat coming up in San Francisco, his mindfulness retreat for financial coaches and advisors. And so it's helping both of us and, leading into a collaboration where we're going to help each other and support each other. And he's another example. He's an author in financial mindset. So somebody could say we're competitors, but our work complements one another.
That's what I love. I love the collaboration. Also, I love the point of looking for heroes and finding those mentors and people around you who are doing great work in the world, who you can model. Because as one of my friends, she was my mentor and now a friend, thanks to podcasting. She said, finding your golden shadow, and like that golden shadow is the positive aspects of somebody else's success that you just need to integrate back into your own self.
Oh, that's beautiful. Very powerful. I love that. What a great recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able to have those heroes and people that you look up to and admire and also stay in touch with. So I love how you have this system of following up and circling back. What a common through line through our conversation has been the power of collaborative relationships and how those help to expand and grow. And so where are you looking to collaborate in your future relationships with what you're looking to grow into in the next year? And maybe someone who's listening to this podcast will be like, I know someone and I'm going to reach out to Joyce.
Yes. Well, I love collaborating with other speakers because sometimes I'm booked and sometimes I've spoken for an organization and they're not going to hire me again for another year or so. So other speakers that I can recommend and we can cross-refer to one another. That's always great. First-time authors, I love supporting them and us brainstorming together, I think is really helpful because it's a little tough putting yourself out there. I think that just having somebody to normalize that experience with is really helpful and appreciated. And female business owners, that's why I love the Dames. And so just meeting similar-minded, abundantly minded, conscious, powerful women who are working on ourselves and supporting one another, that really fills my cup.
Oh, Joyce, it has been such an honor to have you on the Communication Queen podcast. I have learned so much from you, and I am so excited for where you are going in this next year with all of the collaboration, growth, and expansion that you have ahead of you.
Well, thank you so much. I have deep respect and admiration for you, and I'm going to make you one of my Dame's besties too. So I think we have a lot of synergy. So thanks for having me on your show.
I completely agree. I love it. And where can people find you? How can they work with you?
My website is joycemarter.com. So JoyceMarter.com. And my book, again, is The Financial Mindset Fix. It's on Amazon. It's on Audible. If people have credits, that would be great.
Amazing. Go out there, get the book. I was blessed to see Joyce speak at the Dames, giving the rundown of all of the spokes of the wheel of your financial mindset and how to adjust it. And some of those principles we implemented, and it has been a game changer. So I am so honored that you are putting that work out into the world. And I am so excited for where you're headed and where your book is headed and where how many lives it's going to bless in shifting their mindsets from scarcity to abundance. As always, let your voice be heard.
Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.